The morning sun painted golden streaks across the stone walls of Westminster Abbey as crowds began gathering outside. Today marked exactly 1 year since King Charles III's coronation, and the royal family had planned a special reunion to celebrate this milestone. The streets buzzed with excitement as people from all walks of life came together, hoping to catch a glimpse of their beloved royals. Inside Kensington Palace, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood before her bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting a delicate sapphire necklace that had belonged to Princess Diana. The jewelry caught the light beautifully, but more importantly, it carried deep meaning for this special day. She had chosen to wear it as a tribute to William's mother, knowing how much family legacy meant during such ceremonial occasions. Prince William emerged from his dressing room, looking distinguished in his navy ceremonial uniform. The couple exchanged warm smiles, a silent communication that spoke of their shared understanding of the day's significance. They had been through so many public events together, yet each one still brought a mixture of anticipation and responsibility. Down the hallway, the sound of children's laughter echoed through the palace corridors. Prince George, now 10 years old, was attempting to help his younger siblings get ready for the day. Princess Charlotte, 8, sat patiently as her nanny brushed her long brown hair, while 5-year-old Prince Louis bounced excitedly on his bed, clearly thrilled about the upcoming celebration. The family had spent the previous evening discussing what the day would entail. William and Catherine always made sure their children understood the importance of royal duties, while trying to keep things age-appropriate and engaging. They wanted George, Charlotte, and Louis to feel proud of their heritage without being overwhelmed by the weight of expectation. As the family gathered in the main sitting room for breakfast, the atmosphere was relaxed yet purposeful. Catherine had insisted on a proper family meal before the day's activities began. The children chattered excitedly about seeing their grandfather, King Charles, and the other family members who would be attending the reunion. The reunion had been Charles's idea. He wanted to bring together not just the immediate royal family, but also the extended relatives, palace staff, and even some of the people who had made the original coronation possible. It was meant to be a celebration of community and continuity, showing how the monarchy remained connected to the people it served. Outside the palace, security teams were making final preparations. The route from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey had been carefully planned, with crowds already lining the streets despite the early hour. Many people had brought homemade signs and British flags, creating a sea of red, white, and blue that stretched as far as the eye could see. Television crews from around the world had set up their equipment, ready to broadcast this heartwarming reunion to millions of viewers. The global interest in the British royal family meant that even a commemorative event like this would be watched by people in countries far beyond the United Kingdom's borders. Back inside the palace, Catherine was helping Charlotte with her coat when she noticed her daughter seemed a bit nervous. The princess knelt down to her daughter's level, speaking in gentle, reassuring tones. She reminded Charlotte that they would all be together as a family, and that the people they would meet today were friends who cared about them. William was having a similar conversation with George, who, as the future heir, sometimes felt extra pressure during public appearances. His father reminded him that being royal was about serving others and bringing joy to people's lives, not about being perfect or never making mistakes. Little Prince Louis, seemingly unbothered by any concerns, was busy showing his security detail a toy airplane he had brought along. His innocent enthusiasm brought smiles to everyone around him, reminding the adults that sometimes the simplest approach was the most genuine. The family's private secretary appeared to inform them that the cars were ready. As they prepared to leave, Catherine took a moment to look at her family. William stood tall and confident, embodying the dignity of his royal role while maintaining the warmth that made him so beloved by the public. The children, each with their own personality shining through, represented the future of the monarchy. As they stepped outside the palace, the first cheers from the gathered crowd reached their ears. The sound was warm and welcoming, filled with genuine affection rather than mere ceremony. William and Catherine waved to the people who had come to see them off, while the children stayed close to their parents, taking in the excitement of the moment. The drive to Westminster Abbey would take them through some of London's most historic streets. Along the way, they would pass landmarks that had witnessed centuries of royal history, connecting them to the long line of monarchs who had come before. Yet this day was about creating new memories and strengthening the bonds between the royal family and the British people. Catherine reached over to squeeze William's hand as their car began moving. They both understood that days like this were what their royal life was truly about. Not the glamour or the protocol, but the opportunity to bring people together and create moments of shared joy and national pride. The children pressed their faces to the windows, amazed by the number of people who had come out to see them. Their excitement was infectious, reminding their parents why these public appearances, despite their challenges, were so important for maintaining the connection between the monarchy and the people. As Westminster Abbey came into view, its ancient spires reaching toward the cloudy London sky, the family felt a sense of anticipation building. Today would be about celebration, remembrance, and the promise of the future, all embodied in this moment when 3 generations of royals came together to honor their shared commitment to service and their deep love for the nation they were privileged to represent. The royal convoy pulled up to Westminster Abbey amid thunderous applause from the thousands of people who had gathered to witness this historic reunion. The ancient stones of the abbey seemed to vibrate with the energy of the crowd, creating an atmosphere that was both reverent and joyful. Police officers smiled as they helped manage the enthusiastic but well-behaved crowd, many of whom had been waiting since dawn for this moment. As William and Catherine stepped out of their car, the cheers grew even louder. The princess looked radiant in her elegant blue dress, chosen specifically to complement the sapphire jewelry she wore in honor of Diana. William, walking beside her with natural confidence, acknowledged the crowd with genuine warmth, his face showing none of the stiffness that sometimes marked formal royal occasions. The children emerged next, and the crowd's reaction was immediate and heartwarming. Prince George, dressed in a smart navy suit that made him look remarkably like his father, walked with growing confidence as people called out encouragement. Princess Charlotte, in a beautiful cream dress with delicate embroidery, waved shyly at first but then broke into a bright smile when she spotted a group of schoolchildren holding a banner with her name on it. Prince Louis, however, was the star of the moment. The 5-year-old prince seemed completely unbothered by the massive crowd, instead appearing delighted by all the attention. He waved enthusiastically with both hands, occasionally pointing at interesting signs in the crowd or colorful outfits that caught his eye. His natural charm and innocent reactions drew laughter and applause from everyone watching. Inside the abbey, King Charles III was already greeting early arrivals. The newly crowned monarch looked distinguished in his formal attire, but there was a relaxed quality to his demeanor that hadn't always been present in previous years. The crown had brought him a sense of purpose and peace that was evident to everyone around him. Queen Camilla stood beside him, elegant and gracious as she welcomed guests. She had developed a genuine warmth in her royal role, and her easy conversation with visitors from all backgrounds showed how much she had grown into her position. The Queen Consort had a particular gift for making people feel comfortable, even in such grand surroundings. As William's family entered the abbey, the atmosphere inside shifted to one of pure joy. The reunion was bringing together people who had been part of the coronation the previous year. From the Archbishop of Canterbury to the choir boys who had sung so beautifully, from palace staff to representatives of various charities and organizations, the abbey itself looked magnificent. Flowers from the royal gardens decorated the ancient columns, while banners representing different regions of the United Kingdom hung from the stone walls. The combination of traditional grandeur and personal touches created exactly the atmosphere Charles had hoped for. Formal enough to honor the occasion, but warm enough to feel like a true family gathering. George, Charlotte, and Louis were immediately surrounded by their cousins and other young members of the extended royal family. The children's natural ease with each other was delightful to watch, as they whispered and giggled together, sharing jokes that only they understood. Their parents watched with obvious pleasure, knowing how important these family connections were for children growing up in such unique circumstances. Catherine found herself in conversation with some of the women who had worked behind the scenes to make the coronation possible. She had always been particularly interested in acknowledging the contributions of people whose work often went unnoticed. Her genuine interest in their experiences and her thoughtful questions showed the depth of her commitment to understanding all aspects of royal events. William was drawn into discussions with young people who had participated In the coronation ceremony, his ability to connect with different age groups was remarkable, and he listened intently as teenagers described what the experience had meant to them. His questions were thoughtful and his responses showed genuine care for their perspectives. The abbey filled gradually with the gentle hum of conversation as more guests arrived. There were veterans who had participated in the ceremony, musicians who had provided the soundtrack to the historic day, and representatives from Commonwealth nations who had traveled great distances to be part of the original celebration. One particularly moving moment came when the children met some of the young people who had carried the coronation regalia during the ceremony. Charlotte was fascinated by stories of the ancient crown jewels, while George asked detailed questions about the historical significance of different ceremonial objects. Louis, meanwhile, was more interested in whether the crowns were heavy and if they ever fell off anyone's head. The conversations throughout the abbey reflected the unique nature of this gathering. Unlike typical formal royal events, this reunion allowed for more personal interactions. People shared memories of the coronation day, described how the experience had affected their lives, and expressed their hopes for the future of the monarchy. Catherine noticed an elderly woman sitting quietly in one of the pews and approached her with characteristic warmth. The woman turned out to be a retired palace seamstress who had worked on some of the ceremonial garments for the coronation. As they talked, Catherine learned about the incredible skill and dedication that had gone into creating the beautiful clothes worn during the ceremony. Thus, the princess was fascinated by the details of the craftsmanship and the traditions that had been passed down through generations of royal tailors and seamstresses. She made sure to introduce the woman to other guests, ensuring that her contributions were properly recognized and celebrated. Throughout the abbey, similar conversations were taking place. People were sharing stories, making new connections, and deepening existing relationships. The reunion was achieving exactly what King Charles had envisioned. It was creating community and strengthening the bonds that held the extended royal family and their supporters together. As the formal part of the reunion was about to begin, the family gathered near the altar where Charles had been crowned just 1 year earlier. The symbolism was powerful but not overwhelming, serving as a gentle reminder of the continuity of the monarchy and the ongoing commitment to service that defined their lives. The children stood with their parents, looking around at the magnificent abbey with obvious wonder. For them, this was both a family gathering and a history lesson, connecting them to centuries of tradition while showing them how that tradition continued to evolve and adapt to modern times. The formal ceremony began with a beautiful choir performance by the same children who had sung at the coronation the previous year. Their voices echoed through the ancient stone walls of Westminster Abbey, creating an atmosphere of reverence and celebration that touched everyone present. King Charles listened with obvious emotion, remembering how their singing had marked one of the most important moments of his life. Prince Louis, unable to contain his enthusiasm, began swaying gently to the music, his small movements bringing smiles to everyone nearby. Charlotte watched the choir with intense concentration, clearly fascinated by their coordinated performance, while George stood with the composure expected of a future king, though his eyes sparkled with interest at the beautiful music. When the singing ended, King Charles stepped forward to address the gathering. His speech was heartfelt and personal, thanking everyone who had contributed to making his coronation such a meaningful occasion. He spoke about the importance of community, service, and the continuing evolution of the monarchy to meet the needs of modern Britain. The king's words carried special weight because of his long journey to the throne. Having waited decades to become monarch, he brought a unique perspective to the role, understanding both its historical significance and its contemporary relevance. His genuine gratitude toward everyone present was evident in every word he spoke. William and Catherine exchanged proud glances as they listened to Charles speak. They had watched him grow into his role as king with grace and determination, handling the enormous responsibilities with the wisdom that came from years of preparation. The children listened attentively, understanding that their grandfather was speaking about important matters even if they didn't grasp every detail. After the king's address, various representatives from different groups began sharing their memories of the coronation day. A young musician described the honor of performing at such a historic event, while a Commonwealth representative spoke about what the ceremony had meant to people around the world. One particularly touching moment came when a veteran who had participated in the ceremonial procession spoke about his pride in serving his country and his king. His words brought tears to many eyes, including Catherine's, who was always deeply moved by stories of service and sacrifice. The children were invited to participate in a special moment when they helped unveil a commemorative plaque that would remain in the Abbey as a permanent reminder of this reunion. George, Charlotte, and Louis worked together to pull away the silk covering, their coordination and obvious delight bringing joy to everyone watching. As they revealed the beautiful bronze plaque, which featured engravings representing the unity of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, the crowd erupted in applause. The children beamed with pride at their contribution to this historic moment, understanding that they had helped create something that would be remembered for generations to come. Following the formal ceremony, the gathering moved to a reception in the Abbey's Jerusalem chamber, a historic room that had witnessed countless important meetings and discussions throughout British history. The more intimate setting allowed for deeper conversations and more personal connections. Between the royal family and their guests, Catherine found herself speaking with a group of young women who had been involved in various charitable organizations that the royal family supported. Her genuine interest in their work and her thoughtful questions about their experiences showed the depth of her commitment to understanding the real impact of royal patronage. The princess had always believed that royal duties were most meaningful when they created genuine positive change in people's lives. She listened carefully as the women described their projects, taking mental notes about how the royal family might provide even more effective support in the future. William was engaged in conversation with military representatives who had participated in the coronation ceremonies. His own military background gave him a deep appreciation for their service, and his questions about their experiences reflected his ongoing commitment to supporting veterans and active service members. The prince's easy manner with military personnel came from his genuine respect for their dedication and sacrifice. He understood the challenges they faced and was always looking for ways to use his royal platform to support their needs and recognize their contributions to national security. Throughout the reception, the children moved freely among the guests, guided discreetly by their security team, but allowed to interact naturally with the people they met. Their unself-conscious charm and genuine interest in others made them popular with everyone they encountered. Prince George found himself in conversation with some young people who were studying British history, answering their questions about what it was like growing up in a royal family with surprising maturity and thoughtfulness. His responses showed that he was beginning to understand his future role, while still maintaining the natural curiosity of a 10-year-old. Princess Charlotte was particularly drawn to the women present, asking questions about their work and their families, with the kind of direct interest that children often display. Her natural empathy and social awareness were already evident, suggesting that she would develop into someone capable of meaningful public service. Prince Louis, meanwhile, had discovered that several guests had brought photographs from the coronation day, and he was fascinated by seeing himself and his family in the pictures. His reactions to the photos, pointing excitedly at his siblings and asking whether he had really made the funny faces visible in some of the shots, provided entertainment for everyone around him. The atmosphere in the Jerusalem chamber was warm and relaxed, with conversations flowing naturally between people from very different backgrounds who were united by their connection to the royal family and their shared experience of the coronation. The barriers that might normally exist between royalty and subjects seemed to dissolve in this intimate setting. King Charles moved through the room with obvious pleasure, stopping to speak personally with as many guests as possible. His years of experience in royal duties showed in his ability to make each conversation feel important and meaningful, regardless of whether he was speaking to a high-ranking official or a young volunteer. Queen Camilla proved equally skilled at creating connections with the guests, her natural warmth and genuine interest in people making her conversations feel more like friendly chats than formal royal interactions. She had a particular gift for remembering details about people's lives and following up on previous conversations. As the reception continued, it became clear that this reunion was achieving something special. It was creating lasting bonds between the royal family and the people who supported them, while also strengthening the sense of community among all the guests. The event was becoming exactly what King Charles had envisioned, a celebration of shared values and mutual commitment to service. As the afternoon progressed, an unexpected moment occurred that would become the highlight of the entire reunion. Prince Louis, who had been quietly observing the adult conversations around him, suddenly approached the microphone that had been set up for the speeches. The 5-year-old prince seemed to have something important to say. The room gradually fell silent as people noticed the young prince standing confidently at the microphone. His parents looked on with a mixture of pride and gentle concern, ready to step in if needed but willing to let their youngest son express himself. King Charles smiled encouragingly at his grandson, curious to hear what was on the child's mind. In his clear, sweet voice, Prince Louis began to speak. He thanked everyone for coming to see his family and told them how much he enjoyed meeting all the new people. Then, in a moment that touched every heart in the room, he said he wanted to sing a song for his grandfather, the king, because singing made people happy, and he wanted everyone to be happy. Without any prompting or preparation, the little prince began singing God Save the King in his pure, childlike voice. The ancient anthem, sung with such innocent sincerity, created a moment of profound emotion that no one present would ever forget. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as the 5-year-old's voice carried the familiar melody through the historic chamber. The congregation gradually joined in, their voices blending with Louis' in a spontaneous and deeply moving performance. The song that had been sung countless times in formal ceremonies became something entirely different when led by a child who simply wanted to honor his grandfather and bring joy to the people around him. When the song ended, the silence lasted for several heartbeats before the room erupted in the warmest applause of the entire day. King Charles, visibly moved by his grandson's gesture, approached Louis and knelt down to give him a loving embrace. The image of the king and the little prince, representing the past and future of the monarchy, created a moment that perfectly captured the spirit of the reunion. Catherine had tears in her eyes as she watched her youngest son's spontaneous act of love and service. This was exactly the kind of natural grace and genuine care for others that she and William hoped to nurture in all their children. Louis's instinctive understanding that his role was to bring happiness to others showed remarkable emotional intelligence for such a young child. William beamed with fatherly pride, knowing that Louis's gesture came entirely from his own heart. The prince had always encouraged his children to be themselves and to let their natural personalities shine through, even in formal settings. This moment proved that approach was creating confident, caring young people who understood their responsibilities without losing their childhood joy. The spontaneous singing seemed to break down the last remaining barriers of formality in the room. Conversations became even more relaxed and personal, with guests sharing stories about their own families and experiences. The royal family members moved through the crowd with obvious pleasure, no longer bound by the usual protocols of formal events. Princess Charlotte, inspired by her little brother's boldness, began showing some of the guests a dance she had learned in school. Her graceful movements and obvious love of performing brought smiles to everyone watching, while also demonstrating her own emerging confidence in public settings. Prince George, not to be outdone by his siblings, started a conversation with some young historians about his favorite subjects in school. His intelligent questions and thoughtful responses showed that he was developing into a young person capable of engaging meaningfully with serious topics while maintaining his natural curiosity and enthusiasm. The children's natural behaviors were creating opportunities for deeper connections between the royal family and their guests. People who might have felt intimidated by formal protocol found themselves drawn into genuine conversations about family life, education, and shared interests. An elderly woman who had worked as a cleaner in the palace for 40 years found herself chatting with Catherine about the challenges of keeping ancient buildings clean and well-maintained. The princess's genuine interest in the woman's expertise and her thoughtful questions about preservation techniques showed her deep respect for all the people who contributed to royal life. Meanwhile, William was engaged in an animated discussion with a group of young entrepreneurs who had been recognized for their community service projects. His questions about their businesses and his insights about leadership and social responsibility demonstrated his growing confidence in his role as heir to the throne. The conversations throughout the room reflected the unique atmosphere that had developed, People were sharing personal stories, discussing their hopes for the future, and finding common ground across different backgrounds and experiences. The reunion was creating exactly the kind of community connection that made the monarchy relevant and meaningful to modern Britain. King Charles moved through the gathering with obvious satisfaction, seeing his vision for the reunion coming to life. The combination of formal ceremony and personal connection was creating lasting memories and strengthening relationships that would continue long after the event ended. Queen Camilla was particularly touched by the interactions between the royal, children, and the other young people present. She watched as natural friendships formed and as the young royals demonstrated the values their parents had worked so hard to instill in them. As the reception continued, someone suggested that they take a group photograph to commemorate the occasion. The idea was enthusiastically received, and soon everyone was gathering in the main body of the abbey for what would become a historic image. The photograph captured not just the formal participants in the reunion, but the spirit of joy and community that had developed throughout the day. In the center stood King Charles with his family around him, but the image also included everyone who had contributed to making the coronation and the reunion possible. Prince Louis, still glowing from the success of his impromptu performance, stood proudly next to his grandfather, while Charlotte and George flanked their parents with obvious happiness. The entire image radiated the warmth and genuine affection that had characterized the entire event. As the photographer took multiple shots to ensure everyone was included, the conversations and laughter continued. The formal photograph became another opportunity for connection and celebration, rather than a rigid ceremonial requirement. The success of the reunion was becoming clear to everyone present. What had begun as a commemorative event was evolving into something much more significant. Demonstration of how the monarchy could continue to evolve and adapt while maintaining its essential character and values. Following the group photograph, the gathering moved outside to the abbey's beautiful gardens for the final portion of the reunion. The afternoon sun had broken through the earlier clouds, creating perfect conditions for the outdoor celebration that King Charles had planned as the culmination of the day's events. The gardens had been specially prepared for the occasion, with tables set up under elegant marquees and displays showcasing flowers and plants from the various royal estates. The setting combined the grandeur expected of a royal event with the relaxed atmosphere of a family garden party, creating exactly the tone the king had hoped to achieve. As guests moved into the gardens, they were greeted by the sight of the Welsh Guards Band, who had performed at the coronation, setting up for an informal concert. The musicians, resplendent in their traditional red tunics, were tuning their instruments and preparing to provide the soundtrack for the afternoon's festivities. Prince George immediately gravitated toward the band, his fascination with military traditions drawing him to the uniformed musicians. The bandmaster, recognizing the young prince's interest, invited him to examine some of the instruments up close. George's careful attention and thoughtful questions impressed the musicians, who took obvious pleasure in sharing their expertise with the future king. Princess Charlotte was enchanted by the garden displays, particularly the roses that had been grown at Highgrove, King Charles's beloved estate. Her natural love of flowers and growing things had been nurtured by her parents, and she moved from display to display with obvious delight, asking detailed questions about different varieties and growing techniques. Prince Louis, meanwhile, had discovered that several golden retrievers from the royal household were being exercised in a nearby area of the gardens. His immediate attraction to the dogs created another spontaneous moment of joy as he played with them, under the watchful eyes of their handlers and his security team. Catherine found herself drawn into conversations with the garden staff, who had created the beautiful displays. Her long-standing interest in gardening and her patronage of various horticultural organizations gave her genuine expertise to draw upon as she discussed techniques and varieties with the professional gardeners. The princess had always believed that gardens represented hope and continuity, values that were particularly important to the monarchy. Her enthusiasm for the subject was infectious, and soon she was surrounded by other guests who were eager to learn more about the plants and flowers on display. William was engaged with representatives from various Commonwealth nations who had traveled to attend the reunion. His questions about their countries and his obvious interest in their perspectives reflected his growing understanding of the global responsibilities that would one day be the prince's natural Diplomatic skills were evident as he navigated conversations about complex international relationships, while maintaining the warmth and accessibility that characterized his public persona. His ability to find common ground with people from vastly different backgrounds was becoming one of his greatest strengths as a future monarch. The Welsh Guards Band began their performance with a selection of traditional British music, including pieces that had been featured in the coronation ceremony. The familiar melodies created a sense of continuity and connection, linking the celebration back to the historic events of the previous year. As the music played, guests found themselves naturally gathering in small groups throughout the gardens. The combination of beautiful surroundings, perfect weather, and the relaxed atmosphere created ideal conditions for the kind of meaningful conversations that the reunion was designed to foster. King Charles moved through the gardens with obvious pleasure, stopping to speak with different groups and ensuring that everyone felt welcomed and valued. His decades of experience in royal duties showed in his ability to balance the formal requirements of his role with genuine personal warmth and interest in his guests. One particularly touching moment occurred when the king encountered a group of young people who had participated in various coronation ceremonies. His questions about their experiences and his obvious pride in their contributions created a connection that bridged the gap between monarchy and citizens in a way that felt entirely natural. Queen Camilla was in her element in the garden setting, her love of nature and outdoor activities making her an ideal hostess for this portion of the celebration. She moved easily between different groups, her genuine interest in people and her ability to remember personal details making every conversation feel special and meaningful. The children continued to be the stars of the afternoon, their natural charm and unaffected behavior delighting everyone they encountered. Prince George's serious conversations about history and tradition, Princess Charlotte's enthusiasm for the gardens, and Prince Louis's spontaneous joy in simple pleasures created a perfect representation of the monarchy's future. As the afternoon progressed, several guests remarked on how different this royal event felt from the more formal occasions they had attended previously. The combination of ceremony and informality, tradition and innovation, was creating exactly the kind of experience that could help the monarchy remain relevant and beloved in the modern world. The success of the reunion was becoming evident not just in the immediate reactions of the guests, but in the conversations and connections that were developing. People were exchanging contact information, making plans to continue working together, and forming friendships that would extend far. Beyond the day's events, Catherine noticed that many of the women present were discussing the possibility of forming ongoing groups to support various charitable causes. The reunion was not just commemorating past achievements but inspiring future collaborations and initiatives. William observed similar conversations among the men, with veterans, entrepreneurs, and community leaders finding common ground and shared interests. The reunion was achieving one of its most important goals, strengthening the networks of people who shared the royal family's commitment to service and community improvement. The Welsh Guards Band shifted to more contemporary music, including some pieces that reflected the cultural diversity of modern Britain. The evolution of their performance mirrored the broader theme of the reunion, honoring tradition while embracing change and growth. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, creating beautiful golden light throughout the gardens, the day's events were drawing toward their conclusion. However, the connections formed and the memories created would continue long after the guests departed Westminster Abbey. The children, who had been active throughout the long day, were beginning to show signs of tiredness, but their continued engagement with the guests demonstrated the remarkable stamina and social skills they had developed through their royal upbringing. King Charles looked around the gardens with obvious satisfaction, seeing his vision for the reunion fully realized. The event was succeeding beyond his hopes, creating exactly the kind of meaningful celebration that could strengthen the bonds between the monarchy and the people it served. As the golden hour approached, King Charles called for everyone's attention for one final moment of the reunion. The guests gathered in a natural amphitheater formed by the Abbey Gardens, with the ancient stone walls providing a majestic backdrop for what would become the most memorable part of the entire day. The king stood before the assembled crowd, his grandchildren nearby, and began to speak about the meaning of the day's celebration. His words were deeply personal, reflecting on the journey that had brought him to the throne and the support he had received from his family and the British people throughout the past year. Charles spoke about the weight of responsibility that came with the crown, but also about the joy he found in serving the nation and the Commonwealth. His voice carried the wisdom of someone who had waited decades for this role and now embraced it with complete dedication and love for his people. What made his speech particularly moving was his focus on the next generation. Looking at William, Catherine, and their children, he spoke about the continuity of the monarchy and his confidence in the future. His words about George, Charlotte, and Louis were filled with grandfatherly pride and royal dignity, creating a moment that perfectly captured the passing of traditions from one generation to the next. Prince William was visibly moved by his father's words, understanding both the personal affection and the institutional significance of what was being said. The transition from heir to heir apparent, which had occurred with Charles's accession, was being acknowledged and celebrated in this intimate setting with the people who had supported the royal family through historic changes. Catherine listened with tears in her eyes as the king spoke about the role she had played in bringing stability and grace to the royal family. His recognition of her contributions and his confidence in her future role as queen consort created a moment of deep emotion for everyone present. The children stood quietly during their grandfather's speech, their behavior reflecting the excellent upbringing they had received. Even Prince Louis, despite his young age, seemed to understand the solemnity of the moment and maintained appropriate composure while still radiating his natural warmth and charm. When King Charles finished speaking, he invited the children to help him plant a commemorative oak tree that would remain in the Abbey Gardens as a permanent reminder of this special reunion. The tree, grown from an acorn taken from Windsor Great Park, symbolized the deep roots of the monarchy and its continued growth and adaptation. Prince George, as the eldest, was given the honor of placing the first shovelful of soil around the young tree's roots. His careful attention to the task and his obvious understanding of its significance showed remarkable maturity for a 10-year-old. The simple act became a powerful symbol of his future role as protector and nurturer of the nation. Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis each added their own soil to the planting, their giggles and excitement bringing lightness to the ceremonial moment. Their natural joy in the simple act of planting reminded everyone that the monarchy's future lay in the hands of children who understood both responsibility and happiness. The tree planting became an opportunity for other guests to participate as well. Representatives from different Commonwealth nations added soil from their home countries, creating a symbolic unity that reflected the global nature of the modern monarchy. The simple oak tree became a living representation of the connections binding the Commonwealth together. As the planting concluded, the Welsh Guards Band struck up Jerusalem, the beloved hymn that had special significance for King Charles and had been featured prominently in his coronation ceremony. The familiar melody sung by the assembled crowd in the fading light of the afternoon created a moment of profound spiritual and emotional connection. The singing continued with other traditional hymns and patriotic songs, creating an impromptu concert that felt both sacred and celebratory. The voices of young and old, representing different backgrounds and experiences, blended together in harmony that perfectly captured the spirit of the reunion. Catherine found herself standing next to the elderly seamstress she had met earlier in the day, and the two women sang together with obvious pleasure. Their friendship, formed over the course of the celebration, represented exactly the kind of connection that made these royal events meaningful beyond their ceremonial significance. William was surrounded by the young people he had spoken with throughout the day, their enthusiasm and energy evident as they participated in the singing. His ability to connect with the next generation while maintaining his dignity and authority showed the leadership qualities that would serve him well as future king. The children joined in the singing with obvious delight, their clear voices adding sweetness to the community chorus. Their participation demonstrated the natural way they had absorbed the traditions and responsibilities of their royal heritage while maintaining their childhood innocence and joy. As the last notes of the final song faded away, a peaceful silence settled over the gardens. The moment felt complete and perfect, capturing everything that King Charles had hoped to achieve with the reunion. The celebration had successfully honored the past while looking toward the future with confidence and hope. The guests began to realize that this magical day was drawing to a close, but no one seemed eager to leave. The connections formed and the memories created had transformed what could have been a formal, commemorative event into something much more meaningful and lasting. King Charles looked around at the assembled crowd with obvious satisfaction and deep gratitude. The reunion had exceeded his highest expectations, creating exactly the kind of meaningful celebration that could strengthen the monarchy's relationship with the people it served. The royal family stood together as the guests began to prepare for departure, their unity and obvious affection for each other providing a perfect conclusion to a day that had celebrated both family bonds and national traditions. The image of 3 generations of royals surrounded by the people who supported them created a lasting impression of continuity and hope. As the evening light continued to fade, the Abbey gardens seemed to glow with the warmth of the connections that had been formed throughout the day. The reunion had achieved something remarkable. It had made the ancient institution of monarchy feel both timeless and completely contemporary, rooted in tradition, yet adapted for the modern world. As the reunion drew to its close, the guests began their gradual departure from Westminster Abbey, but not before a series of heartfelt farewells that seemed to extend the magical atmosphere of the day. The royal family positioned themselves near the Abbey's main entrance, personally thanking each guest and creating final moments of connection that would be treasured long after the celebration ended. The children, despite the long day, remained engaged and charming as they said goodbye to their new friends. Prince George shook hands with remarkable composure for his age, while Princess Charlotte distributed small drawings she had made during quiet moments throughout the day. Prince Louis, true to form, gave enthusiastic hugs to anyone who would accept them, his spontaneous affection bringing final smiles to faces already glowing with happiness. Catherine moved through the departing crowd with characteristic grace, remembering personal details from conversations throughout the day and following up on discussions about charitable work and community projects. Her genuine interest in people's lives and her ability to make each interaction feel meaningful had been one of the day's highlights. The elderly seamstress whom Catherine had befriended was particularly reluctant to leave, having experienced a day that she described as the highlight of her long career with the royal household. The princess made sure to exchange contact information, promising to visit the woman's local community center, where she volunteered with young seamstresses, learning traditional techniques. William engaged in final conversations with the military, representatives, and young entrepreneurs who had attended the reunion. His ability to balance formal courtesy with genuine personal warmth had created connections that would continue long after the day ended. Several guests mentioned that they had never felt so comfortable in the presence of royalty, a testament to his natural diplomatic skills. King Charles seemed energized rather than tired as the day concluded, his obvious pleasure in the success of the reunion giving him renewed vigor despite the long celebration. He moved slowly through the departing guests, ensuring that everyone received personal attention and that no contribution to the day's success went unacknowledged. The king's conversations with the youngest guests were particularly touching, as he encouraged them to continue their involvement in community service and promised to follow their future achievements with interest. His ability to inspire young people while maintaining the dignity of his office showed the wisdom he had gained through decades of preparation for his role. Queen Camilla proved equally adept at creating lasting impressions during the farewell process. Her natural warmth and her gift for remembering personal details made each conversation feel significant and meaningful. Many guests commented that they felt like they were saying goodbye to a friend rather than a member of the royal family. As the last guest departed, the royal family found themselves alone in the Abbey gardens with the beautiful oak tree they had planted together. The setting sun cast long shadows across the ancient stones, creating a peaceful atmosphere that allowed them to reflect on the extraordinary day they had experienced. The children gathered around the newly planted tree, their earlier excitement giving way to a more thoughtful appreciation of what they had accomplished. Prince George touched the young trunk gently, seeming to understand that they had created something that would grow and flourish long after they were gone. Princess Charlotte picked up some of the scattered flower petals from the day's celebrations, carefully placing them around the base of the tree as an offering of beauty and hope. Her instinctive understanding of symbolism and ceremony showed the depth of her connection to royal traditions. Prince Louis, though tired from the long day, maintained his enthusiasm as he promised the tree that he would come back to visit it as it grew bigger. His innocent commitment to nurturing what they had planted together touched everyone present and perfectly captured the spirit of continuity that had defined the entire reunion. Catherine and William stood together, watching their children interact with the tree and reflecting on the day's events. The success of the reunion had exceeded their expectations, creating exactly the kind of meaningful celebration that could strengthen the monarchy's relationship with the British people. The couple's partnership had been evident throughout the day, their complementary strengths and shared values creating a powerful example of modern royal leadership. Their ability to balance formal dignity with genuine warmth had set the tone for the entire celebration. King Charles joined his family around the tree, his satisfaction with the day's achievements evident in his relaxed demeanor and obvious happiness. The reunion had accomplished everything he had hoped for and more, creating lasting connections and demonstrating the monarchy's continued relevance and vitality. As they prepared to leave the abbey, the family took one final look around the gardens where so much joy and connection had been created. The flowers, the newly planted tree, and the ancient stones seemed to hold the memory of the day's celebrations, promising that the impact of the reunion would continue long into the future. The drive back to Kensington Palace was peaceful and reflective, with the children sharing their favorite moments from the day, and the adults discussing the connections they had formed and the initiatives that might grow from the celebration. The reunion had planted seeds for future collaboration and community building that would continue to flourish. Back at the palace, as the family gathered for a quiet dinner together, they reflected on how the day had exceeded all their expectations. The reunion had successfully honored the past while looking toward the future, strengthening the bonds between the monarchy and the people it served. The children's natural behavior throughout the day had shown that the values their parents worked so hard to instill were taking root. Their combination of royal dignity and genuine warmth promised well for the future of the monarchy and its continued connection to the British people. As the day ended, the oak tree stood quietly in the abbey gardens, its roots already beginning to establish themselves in the historic soil. Like the monarchy itself, it represented continuity and growth, tradition and adaptation, promising to flourish for generations to come while providing shelter and strength for all who gathered beneath its branches. The Coronation reunion had achieved something remarkable. It had demonstrated that ancient institutions could evolve and adapt while maintaining their essential character and values. The royal family's natural grace and genuine care for others had created a celebration that would be remembered not just for its beauty and ceremony, but for the human connections it fostered and the hope it inspired for the future.